So we want to talk about trends. Um, like you can always talk about intranet trends. Like I think the first intranets came out in the late 90s, and since then we've seen a lot of waves of different intranets, like from employee portals or social intranets. And we want to focus this time on one hand. There's two reports coming out from leading industry analysts, and we want to look a bit how they see intranets and how they look at them. And then obviously there's an elephant in the room, which is AI. And we want to spend some time and think about what does AI do intranets? What's the things we see today and what's the potential we can expect to see in the next couple of months and years. So that's pretty much what we want to talk about here.
Awesome. Do you want to introduce yourself, Frank? I don't think we've technically done that. I know your photo's here on the screen, but...
Happy to do that. I'm one of the co-founders of Staffbase, and in the context of intranets, I've been consulting about intranets for nearly 20 years. I've written the first book about social intranets, like also more than 10 years ago already. So I've seen the space for a long time. I've seen also a lot of people say the intranet is dead for a long time, and a lot of intranets that came still in the market. And it seems the concept is still there and is still valid and still alive. And as we will see shortly, there are new exciting times ahead of what we can expect of intranets. What about you, Lindsey?
Cool. Yeah, so I'm Lindsey, and I have not been in the game quite as long, but I love learning from the pros who have been. I'm a senior product marketing manager, and I look over our app and intranet products. And so, yeah, just excited to dive in. As we go, if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, and we will try to answer those. Or, of course, if we aren't able to get them answered during the session itself, we'll have some follow-up from that as well. So just a little housekeeping to get out of the way, but I think we might be ready to dive in. Are we, Frank?
We are. And I think first there are some congratulations due, right?
I think so too. We haven't had an intranet event specifically in a little bit. And since then, we've had a few cool kudos that are needing to be given out. So just wanted to give a big shout out to those who won awards at the Simply EXP Simplies. Moto Hospitality won Best Intranet. So we are super proud of you all. DHL came in with Best Frontline Engagement. And we also had OVO Energy coming in with commendations for Best Intranet and Excellence in DE&I. So really excited to see you all pushing the envelope on those and winning big. And then in our North American side, we had the recent Provoke Media Sabre Awards. So huge shout out to Walgreens for your W Connect project. So yeah, just wanted to say congratulations to those of you out there and keep the good stuff coming.
Same here. Congratulations. Great achievement. Yeah, so what's up with the market analysts?
What's up lately? So for those of you who may or may not know, Gartner, big analyst in this space, they actually just launched their first ever Magic Quadrant for Intranet Packaged Solutions. Really a deep look into the market, into the trends, who's out there in the market. And we thought this would be a really interesting place to kind of start the trends discussion, bringing in that third-party voice. Because as Frank said a little bit ago, he's seen the comes and goes, right? You've seen the waves, Frank. And there's been the questions, are intranets dead? Or, you know, what's up with intranets? And it's really interesting to see this really key analyst come in and say, this is a really important space. And they really kind of framed the report around this concept that there's a lot of pressure right now to engage, to retain employees, to improve employee experience, and that they actually believe that intranets are really kind of that enabler to support employees on the road to the future of work. So some really interesting feedback from them on how to kind of approach this concept, but I thought we could bring maybe a few trends that they noted. And since you have seen the waves, I thought I'd ask you what you think about these trends and what we should be considering. How does that sound?
Yeah, great. I mean, one thing you just said, like maybe from my experience, like talking to Gartner for many years also, and being at their events and learning from what they've done. Gartner is looking into technology for quite a long time before they actually decide to do a magic quadrant, because they are very much driven by demand they see in the market. And if they see demand going upwards, and if they have a lot of inquiries and requests from companies, they decide to say, let's do a quadrant here, because that market is actually growing and gaining more importance, right? So that's a real sign in the market that intranets are not declining, but that intranets are growing, and there's a growing interest. And by the way, another thing, a couple of years ago, there was just one Gartner analyst covering intranets, and now you have two or sometimes even three, depending how you count them. So there's real demand, and I think that's a good sign, first of all.
Yeah, love that. And I think too, one of the key things they said, right? It's like you're saying, it's a lot about interest and demand, but they're seeing it as one of kind of the quickest avenues towards, really excelling with, informing and engaging employees, which is quite, a notable statement there from them. So, well, I thought here's the first trend I brought for you, and I'll see if any of these surprise you, any of these you agree, disagree. And if you have any feedback or thoughts on these trends in the chat, feel free to throw them in. But the first one I thought I'd bring is that actually in the requirements for an intranet, so in this report, of course, they list what are the things that we expect of an intranet vendor. This is how you get into the report, right? There's all these kinds of lists and requirements. This is what you should look for from an intranet. And so one of the kind of mandatory requirements, if you will, was actually multi-experience support. And I think we more maybe in the layman terms lingo may call it multi-channel. But this is quite a notable shift in how we view intranets, how we think about the market, about what it does, and actually who an intranet is able to serve. So what do you think about that being kind of a key requirement that they've called out for an intranet? What is that signaling to you?
I mean, that's a real change compared to even 5 years ago. How intranets were always seen as like it's a desktop application. Gartner, like one of the analysts that's actually doing the report, also did a lot of market research on employee communication applications, employee apps, and was also already covering Staffbase in these regards. And now these things converge, and there's a natural expectation to say we expect our intranet not just on the desktop, we want it in the pocket of our employees. Intranets, and there are other spaces that we also know very well, like the email tools. I want to send internal email newsletters to my employees with all the features that you need for that. That's also a channel, that's also an experience, that also should be part of an intranet, and even more so. So it's really becoming a multi-channel platform compared to just being on the desktop. And that's really like 5 years ago not happening. Even like 10 years ago when we founded Staffbase, that was like, as an intranet consultant, my major frustration. Most of my customers wanted to have mobile support for intranet, and there wasn't just anything in the market to do that, right? So really great to see Gartner also arriving at that stage.
Yeah, and I mean, that was kind of right, one of the beginning places of Staffbase was this recognition. And speaking of that, there's kind of another trend that they bring, which I find is interesting and relevant. And they talk about this new focus on the front line. And I'm going to put new a little bit in air quotes because I would say that's not really like a new focus for Staffbase. What do you kind of think about this really maybe escalating as a trend now, or what do you think is driving this fact that really kind of frontline is a core focus? Maybe with a little bit of your experience of,
Yeah.
right, coming from Intranet as well, and starting with an app with Staffbase.
I think it's good, and I'm happy that it's there, and it's very important to have this in the report and also seen by the analysts. Two insights here, which are not specifically there, which I think really important. First, we've seen over time, the moment you put out a mobile solution, it's adopted by everyone. It's not just frontline. Like every worker is a mobile worker today. Like everyone wants to put the intranet in the pocket, right? So mobile frontline, yes, it's a part of it, but mobile enables so much more. So don't discount mobile just on that. That's one side. And the other side is mobile for many years actually has been seen as a very lean news app for frontline workers. Like just give them the news instead of the employee newspaper. And the concept that we've seen works so much better is to really think about mobile as an intranet, to say, what are comms, what are services, what are important information from the employee handbook and everything else from the directory can be put in people's hands. Like it should be a practical help. So thinking of a mobile app, like this shift from a mobile comms app to a mobile intranet, the company in the pocket, I think is very important to make this really helpful. A lot of companies had projects with mobile apps which didn't work because they were too lean and just like had top news in there, and everyone was like disappointed why it didn't work, right? So mobile has quite a few dimensions in there, and let's just be happy it's in there.
Happy it made the list. Well, I hope I don't steal anyone's thunder, because I imagine this will come up in the HR session later with Laura and Norbert. But of course, that's a cornerstone of the DHL project, right? With Staffbase, and kind of having that smart connect where they bring all those things together for their 500,000 plus employees. So definitely cool to see that confirmed, and as you said, glad to see it in there. Cool. So here's another one that I think people will find interesting, because I think it's something that always comes up when we're talking about intranets. And this is the fact that Microsoft is actually not considered as a part of the Magic Quadrant. They are not considered based off of the criteria to be an internet package solution. However, they, of course, are a big influencer in this space, and SharePoint is a big influencer in this space. And so a lot of their recommendation was around making sure you have a strategy to understand where Microsoft fits in, and where your intranet fits in. So what would you say to that, and what's your kind of take on that trend and that context, maybe?
I think Microsoft is always like, as it's the ecosystem of also for like 95% of our customers, it's always an ecosystem that's very important. It's always there, and it's very important also to integrate well into it. Like Staffbase itself runs on Microsoft Azure as a base platform, as an example. One major trend you can see in the past couple of years now with Microsoft is it's been developed and transformed from a platform that was very flexible towards much more a product-like application, which has advantages and disadvantages. Like the advantage is Microsoft, and also with Microsoft Viva and Teams, you can much more switch it on as a product, like plug and play today, especially good news for smaller companies. We would say like up to 500 or 1,000 employees, to actually switch it on and make it work. What you've done in the past is build big intranets on top of Microsoft with a lot of hours, sometimes even years of work, like to turn SharePoint into the company intranet and so on. That's not like, it doesn't make sense anymore. It's not actually possible anymore. For instance, for Viva and so on, you cannot do all the customizing work anymore. And that's why Gartner said for these larger companies, which is pretty much the target audience of Gartner, Microsoft has transformed in a tool, plug and play for a lot of productivity applications like Microsoft Teams, but it's not so much the basis anymore for a large enterprise-wide intranets. That's why they, from our understanding, they left it out. And I think that's totally correct. It's not saying you cannot use Microsoft as an intranet, especially if you're a smaller company with not too many requirements. But what's clear, each of these packaged solutions, which are in the report, they all need to integrate very well with Microsoft because Microsoft is there in all the aspects.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that was the big takeaways, right? You have to make sure you have a strong strategy around how you work in that space, because there's a very clear role that Microsoft plays, but around this kind of engage, connect, and inspire employees, there's a role there for intranets, but they need to work together. So cool. All right, I brought one final trend for you, and I think it's the hot topic trend. As you said, it's the elephant in the room. And of course, it's AI. So as of right now, it is not on the list of must-have requirements for an intranet. Gartner does not yet list AI as a must-have. Of course, there's a big reference to it, a big discussion on the trend of AI. And they talk about how it's really going to need to be integrated in a way that adds value, right? We don't just want buzzword AI. It needs to be value for end users and for people who are admins and editors on the back end as well. Yeah. But I'm curious, how long do you think AI will be on the kind of recommended list versus on the kind of required list for intranets? Knowing that we'll deep dive a little more into this topic in a bit, but just curious your take on that.
I mean, my quick take is I really like that Gartner's doing that, because sometimes Gartner and the analysts are more like on the side of the buzzword side of things, and they there's new concepts and they expect all the vendors doing all the new stuff without even knowing what it's for, right? And I think it's with AI, a lot of innovations are happening right now, and a lot of pretty obvious things like how you create content can be brought into intranets. But a lot of other things like how it helps the search and so on, we'll talk about this in a second. It's still not clear if it's so useful, right? And I think it's totally right to say a lot of potential's there, but it's not a must-do, because we will have to figure out how things work in the future. So I think it's a good move from Gartner not to overemphasize this topic.
Cool. Still shaking out, we would say. Well, we were super thrilled, obviously, to be named a leader in the brand new Gartner Magic Quadrant. But of course, they're not the only ones, right, out there talking about intranets. So there's another vendor who's an analyst who's been around for a while, creating reports pretty much only on Clearbox. And Frank, what do you kind of think about that? Maybe based off of some of the Gartner trends, do you think they align with what kind of Clearbox puts out in their report and where they're thinking? Is it different?
We just wanted to bring this up here because we talk about Gartner, and there is this one other analyst, Clearbox from the UK. The team around Sam Marshall is doing an amazing job for many years now. It's to be honest, the ones that know the market best and have such a deep understanding of the market. If you don't believe me, download this report. The report is free of charge for end users, so you can go to their website, download this report. You just need to be prepared that it's over 700 pages, but you can read this selectively. It's also a recommendation, even if you're not looking for a tool and just want to learn a bit about intranet. It's an amazing resource. You have to be crazy to build this report. I just have to say it, and just a high recommendation to do that. And Lindsey, because you asked, what similarities? I think it's the same thing. Like mobile is a big trend that they see, like different channels, multi-channel experience. They also see the general trend that intranets get more leaner, more on the communication side of things, or front door intranets, as we call them. And things like analytics get more important, and intranets are more reduced from the big employee portal that takes years to introduce to a much faster, lightweight, and more user-friendly tool. And I think that's pretty much the same, along the same lines. And with that, we're also very happy that Clearbox sees Staffbase as the leader in the field in that regard. So just a recommendation at this point, if you want to learn more, download the report.
Cool. And I think we'll send that out as well in some follow-up, or maybe in a chat or something. So you can be looking there. You don't even have to go hunt it down. We'll send it your way. But Frank, I think everyone's, since you already teed it up and you already said you were going to talk about AI, I'm sure everyone is looking forward to that. So
AI. Let's talk about AI.
Let's talk about AI. But before we jump in, we do have a little poll. You gave your feedback. Gartner's given their feedback. I would just like to know what the audience thinks. What do you think should be a requirement for a modern intranet as it relates to AI? Is it a must-have, nice to have, totally unnecessary? So we'll send that poll. You let us know. And Frank, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about AI as it relates to intranets and communication.
We've done a poll in one of our AI bootcamps a couple of weeks ago, where we were asking like how many of you already use ChatGPT back then for communication. So we've seen that there's like 1/3 already using this on a daily use. So I think pretty amazing adoption of the technology so far. And because there's a lot of discussions around AI guidelines and governance, a lot of them take a very good approach from our perspective, which is we don't have them yet, but we are allowed to use it, and we are allowed to learn how it actually helps us. And I think that's the best approach also towards regulation here, finding out, learning more about the use cases, and then with that knowledge actually help to govern and regulate what's happening with AI. So that's the comms side of things. If you think about an intranet, we would see the typical use cases of an intranet, like communication, information, services, and community, as a base to discuss AI, right? And we know that you could also traditionally look at intranets as things where teamwork happens, like things that are happening in Microsoft Teams today. That's things that are excluded here because they are not really considered something that you would do in intranet anymore. And what I want to do really quick is go through all 4 use cases and pretty much give you a short idea where we see AI happening here. And we start off with communication. For communication, we've also gathered quite some experience in the past couple of months. We've launched an AI tool called Staffbase Companion, which is based on the technology behind ChatGPT. But in our case, it's not hosted by OpenAI, it's hosted by Microsoft Azure. So we are able to provide enterprise level compliance and also data security. And like a typical question would be, the data that I put in, does it go outside of the company? Is it used to train the models and so on? No, it's not the case, right? And what's already been proven in many cases, AI helps to write content faster. It helps to like brainstorm content better and also create a drafts better. And it's also like really helpful in terms of just raising the bar on your quality and the clarity that you put out. And we've gathered a lot of insights, and we'll now use these insights to improve the way we support content creation in the Staffbase intranet. I want to give you one idea what these insights are. Here's one quite interesting number that we found out. So we offered a couple of things you could do with content, like to adjust the tone, to create drafts, to write summaries. And what people actually liked and loved most was to create teasers and titles. So you could write a lot of the users wrote the text themselves, but used AI to suggest a cool teaser and a cool title for that, which is, I think, a very nice and creative way to use the help of AI in this regard.
And Frank, not to be cheesy, but thank you for teasing our live check later, because we're going to be maybe showing it off a little bit in our last session of the day if people want to see it.
That's a amazing teasing at this point. A second one, a second data point, not from Staffbase, but from Harvard Business School, is they used AI and asked consultants, actually, I think consultants from Boston Consulting Group, to do 18 typical consulting tasks. What could these be? Probably like creating some sort of presentations and so on, right? And they were given AI and sometimes not given AI. And what they've seen with the group that used AI, they had a substantial improvement in quality. That was quite an interesting result. But I think even more interesting, they had data about the skill level of participants, and they were able to cut the participants in half and pretty much say, we have the bottom half skilled participants and the top half skilled participants, and they've seen AI helps the bottom half even more than the top half. So if somebody is pretty good at what they're doing, AI might not be a great of a boost as if somebody's a beginner, or maybe in terms of employee communications, a part-time editor, right? So the interesting thing here is AI can help make all of us better, especially if people don't do it all day, every day, right? So a lot of potential of AI, especially for communications, for all those part-time editors out there to help them do a better job. One short thought on the whole AI for communications thing. And you could now say, what's the next thing? Like, what's the next innovation happening? I get content editing, but is it possible to have like whole campaigns in the future with AI? So I press this big red button and say, generate the campaign, do all the content, all the target groups, do it all for me. I don't need comms anymore. We don't see that's happening because the complexity of the task is pretty high, and there's just no training data out there to even train an AI and tell it what does great comms look like, especially for specific audiences and so on. So that's pretty much, I would park this for a bit now. We have quite some ideas how to even push comms more with AI, how to improve it. We'll put this out in the next months to come and test a lot of these things, but communication still has to be done to some degree by people and communicators, which I think is a definitely good message. So communication gets 2 out of 3 stars in terms of potential for AI for me. Information, the next one, and information is maybe one of the areas where I had also quite a big learning, because when we've seen first, like when ChatGPT came out, and we had a lot of discussion also with customers, and in terms of, could I use all my enterprise data? Could I put all of this into this large language model, and AI would tell me everything I need to know about my company? And this thinking was sort of along the lines of AI is the new search index. And what we've learned now and what we know now, that's not the case for a couple of reasons. One is you cannot train the AI with all your data all the time. Like if you have new content coming up every day, you cannot retrain the model all the time because it's simply too much effort and too expensive. That's one thing. The other thing is it's these large language models, they need a lot of data, and a single like company or enterprise is just not big enough in terms of data to actually provide it. Other things are more tactical, like a search index is like security trimmed. Like there might be a document that Lindsey is able to find and allowed to see, and I should not see it, right? AI is not able to do this today. So AI is not a search index. Think of it, and that's a more like extensive description here. It's a personal assistant. It has extensive general knowledge, pretty much has seen all the texts in the world, which is great. It can understand very quick, but it has a short-term memory. So it's whatever you discuss with AI is in a so-called context window, right? It won't like keep the things that you tell it over weeks or even years, right? But this is changing, and I want to show you what I mean with that. What I can do with AI today is I can take a document, and here's an example. That's the Staffbase Big Book of Intranets. It's like about 100 pages and 150 or so page PDF. You find it on our website. You can download it, and I can use this and upload it into to AI, to ChatGPT in this case, right? And I can say, read the document, and then I can ask ChatGPT specific questions about this document, and it will go through it and read it. So AI has some sort of this short-term memory where I can give it certain amounts of data, of content, to think about it. And this short-term memory, this is continuously extending, right? In AI terms, it's called the context window. And OpenAI has recently announced that they extend the context window to 128K tokens. This means 128,000 tokens. What's a token? A token is pretty much the base currency of a large language model. If you look at this, at the example here, you see in the first line the word revolutionized. It's one word split into 2 tokens. And as an average, we can say, if you multiply the tokens with 0.75, you get a rough idea of the words. So OpenAI can, with 128,000 tokens, hold about 96,000 words in the context window, which is about 1 book or 50 blog articles. So now you may ask, like, what's good with that? What can I do with this? What you can do with it is you can give AI context of your own company in the future. So you could say, I have an employee handbook, which is maybe 50,000 words, and I upload it to AI. AI can understand it and incorporate it into the language model, and then I can use a chat or a search function to ask about specific things about the employee handbook, right? And the bigger the context window gets, the more it will be possible to use enterprise data and give it to the AI and get the feedback from the AI. One thing that we are doing right now already, that's sort of along these lines, is we use a search function inside of Staffbase and combine this with AI, which pretty much works in a way that you have a chatbot, you ask the chatbot a question, and the chatbot, the first thing, will go to the normal search, find search results, and AI will then help to summarize the search results and answer the question with a natural language and summarize this up without you even having to look into each search result. The idea here is especially to make search way more accessible, especially also to frontline workers, especially also on mobile devices. So I can ask a simple question in natural language and get a simple answer back. Still, what's needed here is a good search function and still well-organized, unfortunately, content, because you can only find what's actually there, right? And the large language model will not be able to come up with stuff. It will have to find things in there. But once this is working well, and that's something we are trying right now, right? So it's not where we say it's there, it's out there, and it's working perfectly. There's a lot of testing and trying that we do, but that's sort of the reason why we say the information part of the intranet could get a huge boost from AI once we are able to sort of perfect the combination between search and the large language model. I hope that's not too complex, but gives an idea where this is going. So we see a lot of potential. It's not here yet. We are building a lot around that.
I'm excited about this, Frank. I will say I signed up to be in the internal test group for Staffbase's own instance. So I'm a big fan of this one.
Me too. But I love expectation management, and I work a lot with ChatGPT, and the moment ChatGPT involves Bing and involves the search, things are like it's not the same experience as it's when it's really using the large language model. Like it's so much more intelligence in the large language model what you get out of this rather than if it's using Bing. So I think we need to put in a lot more effort and research to really make this work in a great way. So it's like there will be great things happening, but it's gonna be a road to achieve that. But we are like highly motivated to do that. Just looking
all great things come with a little work, right?
Just looking at the time, like a very quick summary for the other two, and I don't have specific slides for them, so we can do them more quickly. For services, I'm medium excited because services, like, give you an example, a phone book. Usually, if the user interface and the UI is great, it's already pretty well done. And AI doesn't have a lot of potential here to like boost services further on. Like also the same with if you want to have HR integrations and so on. If they are done really well, the potential of AI is not that great. So it gets 2 stars because maybe we have some ways to integrate AI better in a chatbot and help employees find better ways to find their benefits and other things around the HR integration to help the employee experience. That's the case. The least excited is I am about AI is communities, because communities is a deeply personal matter and people want to talk to people, and we want to exchange with other people. And if I ask a question or I have an idea, I want to be seen. Like, I don't want to get an answer from AI on that. I want to make sure other people see it. I even read a very interesting quote from somebody on LinkedIn the other day who said, if there's music that's entirely generated by AI, I don't want to listen to it. I want to listen to something. If I look at art, I want to look at something that's another person has done, because that actually creates for me a reason to look at it or to listen to it. And I think maybe there will be use cases. I would be very careful in communities to think about too much in AI in terms of, oh, let's auto-generate the replies to questions people ask and so on. Like, let's be very careful about this. That's why community only gets 1 star. So I hope that's a first quick overview about where we see the potential for intranet. Yes, it's there. I agree with Gartner. It's early. Let's keep researching. Let's keep testing. And that's what we are doing with Staffbase Companion, where we're trying to push the boundaries here a bit and learn as fast as possible what's happening.